So you're thinking about investing in real estate. Well, you come to the right place. Canadian Real Estate Channel, I'm Adam J.D. Martin. Today I'm your host, and I'm going to be covering 3 rules you must know about investing in real estate. The first one, you've heard a bunch of times, but I want to break it down for you. Location, location, location. You've heard it 100 times. It's probably boring as hell, but I'm telling you, it really does matter. The reason location matters so much is because you need to consider who the end user actually is. When we're talking about investing in real estate, we're talking about making a product for another user. And people need to think about it like that. A lot of people think just because it's a house, it's not a product, but it is. And if you were a company marketing a product and building out a product, what considerations would you make when thinking about what features does it need? How should the packaging look? What am I going to do to make this product sell for the most that it can? How am I going to reach the highest and best use, the highest potential for that product? Well, part of that when it comes to real estate is thinking about the location. What's the proximity to schools? What's the proximity to public transportation? How many jobs are in the neighborhood? What's the population growth like? What does that neighborhood specifically cater to? Does it cater to more the blue collar type of employee that's driving to work every day and they're gone, they're not really home? Is it cater more to a luxury setting? Does it cater more to young families? Does it cater to retirees? These types of questions are going to help guide you along the way when you're investing in the actual assets in that neighborhood to help you decide what needs to go into the property. Would adding a garage in a neighborhood add a significant amount of value to that property? Would adding additional parking add value? Would subtracting a bathtub add value for a young family, or do they need that bathtub? Would adding accessibility features like wheelchair accessibility add value in an area where there are more retirees? You have to think about these things, and when it comes to location, you need to look a bit below the surface. One of the great ways to start when it comes to location is to just look on Google Maps. Do a street view walk around. This is a best practice that I use all the time when I'm starting to look at a new property. Walk the streets. If you can't go there in person, then walk the streets on Google Maps. You can walk around and see what's going on in the neighborhoods. What I'm looking for in general is how many houses are in disrepair in that block. And hopefully I'm buying the worst house on the block and making it the best. But I'm looking for houses in disrepair. I'm looking at what vehicles are in that neighborhood. I'm looking at how much traffic is in that neighborhood. And I'm trying to get a feeling for the average sort of demographics in that neighborhood. I also want to get an idea of what that neighborhood itself represents. For example, in London, we've got a neighborhood called Old East Village. And it kind of is what it sounds like. It's old. It's a bunch of century houses that have been slowly gentrified and brought into a sort of more modern feel. And when you walk through Old East Village, you get the feeling that this neighborhood is adapting, it's evolving, it's growing with the city. It's a younger population mixed in with an old population that are really taking great care of their properties and improving the values. And so that might be a great place for you to look at potentially investing, compared to some of the other neighborhoods in London, like maybe Soho, where it's developing a lot slower, and the average homeowner there is not really concerned about the aesthetics of their property, the amenities of their property. They're more concerned about getting to work on time. So there's differences there in some of these neighborhoods that you really need to take into consideration, and that location is going to impact your investment decisions. How much money should you invest, right? What are the recent relevant comparable sales in that area, that neighborhood, that side of the street, so that you can understand, is this investment going to match your goal? This will also help you to not over renovate. That's a big common problem that people do when they don't understand the location they're investing in properly. It's very common for people to over renovate and not be able to actually recapture that value, because when the appraiser goes to look at the building, or when your new potential buyers come in, if you're doing a flip, when they come in, they look at the area and they just don't see the value that you see, regardless of the cost that you put in. So location really does matter. The next point I want to bring up, and pillar to real estate investing, is financial prudence. You need to do your due diligence. You need to understand the cost of acquisition, of renovation, and of the ownership holding costs. When it comes to acquisition, you've got several costs. You have to move utilities. There's a bunch of fees that come with that. You have closing costs like land transfer tax, lawyer fees, and real estate costs. You also have costs related to moving. You have costs related to materials, once we get into renovations, you have to hold the property, which includes paying utilities, taxes, insurance, any type of improvements that you're doing on the capital expenditure side, as well as any maintenance that comes up while you're actually doing your improvements and after. When it comes to holding the property, you have all of those costs still, but now you have somebody who's renting your property and adding wear and tear, and things will come up. One thing that constantly gets overlooked when people invest in real estate is for the first 3 months, I always like to have extra cash on hand for all the little things that your tenants will find. There will be little improvements that you either forgot to wrap up or didn't wrap up properly that will lead you to have additional calls for the first few months that somebody's living in the space. The reality is, when you do a full renovation, you're not living in there every day. You're not using the space the way it's intended to be used. And your tenants will find creative ways to torture you by passing on new costs to you every single day for the first few months. So that's something that really needs to be taken into consideration. And finally, there's risk management. You need to have a really, really, really strong understanding of risk management. We've talked about financial prudence from the sense of holding costs, acquisition costs, renovations, taxes, maintenance, and insurance, that type of thing. But when we talk about risk management, we're thinking about macroeconomics. We're thinking about the whole market. What are you prepared to do if the market drops 20% in value? Do you need to sell? If you're looking to sell, maybe you're trying to do a flip and you need to get that capital back out because you borrowed private capital and it's expensive, then you need to think about, what are your pivots? What sort of exit strategies do you have? What sort of strategies are you going to mix in and combine? Over the last couple of years, commercial investors got punished badly because people were out of the office. There was less demand for those commercial businesses. Small businesses were shut down when there were things like lockdowns and restrictions on how much business could go on. Student rental investors got punished because, students weren't on campus. They were doing everything online. And so there was less demand for student rentals. When we're thinking about risk management, we need to think about, are we buying at the appropriate price so that we can pivot to other strategies? What is our actual strategy mix inside of our portfolio, or are we all in on one strategy? For those people that were all in on, say, student rentals, and then all of a sudden there's no students, something that we couldn't have predicted, and maybe it won't even happen again, but it happened, right? It actually did happen. And if they had all their eggs in one basket, I bet they were in a really bad spot. One of the pillars to investing in real estate, and one of the rules that you have to follow, is risk management. That means having diversity in your portfolio, whether that's stocks, bonds, index funds, crypto, Bitcoin, whatever. You should have some diversity, because if everything goes wrong and you're all invested in one strategy, and that strategy is the thing that is causing the actual failure in your business model, you're probably going to be forced into making decisions you otherwise would not have done on your own accord. So we want to factor that in when we're talking about risk management. One common example of this is somebody who runs the numbers on a property thinking that they will always have the maximum income from something like a short-term rental strategy. And then in comes the government and slaps a regulation or some sort of roadblock in the way, preventing a short-term rental from happening, or saying that you can't continue operating that business, or they change the zoning, they introduce a license that you don't qualify for. That type of risk management is really bad if you're all in on that strategy. So what we want to focus on is flexibility and diversification. You have to build that in. So the 3 rules for investing that you must follow are location, financial prudence, and risk management. If you do those 3 things properly, you will greatly, greatly, greatly reduce the risk of you having to make financial decisions that are not in service of your goals. And ultimately, we all want to grow our portfolios, we all want to make money here, and we want to stay focused on the profits, not the problems. Following these 3 rules will help you do just that.